The Black Banners of the East Satellite Channel. Visit our website, alrayat for more information about our call. And subscribe today to our official YouTube channel for daily online videos.
.5G is a weapon.
By next year, the United States is on pace to have more 5G spectrum than any other country in the world.
It has probably been quietly rolled out for many years.
There's a rush to get it in because globally everyone is actually asking questions.
And if I wanted to scan your home with that technology, 3.5 volts to 12 volts would be max. I can still look through your home, no problem. The equipment on the top of that street light is absolutely lethal. It has the potential to harm.
Human beings are very compliant. People who have agendas use that compliance.
And I don't want to overstate this, but if ever there was a case for the precautionary principle, it is now.
Today, over 3 billion people own a mobile device, and the average age to first receive one is only 8 years old now. The precedent started with first-generation technology known as 1G in 1985, and the focus there was only on voice activation. Second-generation 2G in 1992 allowed talk and text, and 3G, the internet, brought more data in 2003. The fourth generation completed digital migration in 2013, and 5th-generation technology due to roll out in 2020. Such mobile devices send microwave frequencies to and from the base station. The migration seems to even break down into phases. Phase 1 began with holdable devices, leading to an addiction to smartphones, gaming gadgets, SMS text revolution, and applications. Through aggressive marketing, peer pressure, and assumed status association, it led to Phase 2 with wearables. They bombarded us with adverts. Parents who want to please their kids realize the quickest way to their hearts is usually through the latest gadgetry. A recent story I overheard at the airport was about the number of technical gadgets each person was carrying. People now seem to have a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, and usually a few more random electronic toys. Take those 3 gadgets alone, multiplied by a flight of 150 people who do not follow the airplane mode rule, and you have 400 plus devices bouncing signals around an airplane cabin. The future of wireless technology holds the promise of total connectivity, enabling high-density information transfers, a network of networks, or an Internet of Things. They imply how such features would provide more convenience and comfort and more efficient lighting systems. People will be able to have gadgets and office assistants in every room and to interact with them as if they are human. But surely this transparent access to our data comes with a price.
If you imagine we're somewhere in the future and everything has got a nanochip in it, so in your home, your sofa, your tables, your chairs, everything that you bought, it's quite easy to map your house with what you have. Obviously people who are interested in this sort of information just feel our privacy and our individuality is going to be quite seriously compromised.
On one hand, 5G will enable an Internet of Things all linked together, from cars and watches and fridges, hats, milk jugs and floor tiles, with thermostats linked remotely. They even propose a robot to serve you tea, not possible to operate on 4G technology. This has indeed ushered in a dramatic change in our apparent world already, and some of the observable effects would lead anyone to bring into question why we are still proceeding with this technology. We already have a highly integrated technical society with Wi-Fi and phone masts, TV, cell phones, microwave ovens, baby monitors, wireless radio, satellites, etc., etc. Should we not introduce a system first that measures radiation exposure before we roll out 5G? The telecoms companies and UK 5G rollout teams refuse to speak to us and to declare their position despite numerous requests and statements, such as from Gareth Elliott, the head of communications for Mobile UK, which alludes to their real plans. Building Mobile Britain relies on strong partnerships, and local government has a vital role to play in delivering this goal. Embedding mobile connectivity into every aspect of local government thinking.
5G is a weapon.
David Icke reveals this is being promoted by social media on a massive scale. Google and Facebook are all at the cutting edge. Ray Kurzweil, a Google executive, claims 80% success rates in predicting the new technologies coming in. Consequently, himself he is able to generate a sales pitch well in advance to coerce the masses with an illusion of choice. When we connect to the Internet of Things, will our lives truly be more comfortable and efficient? The propagandists claim this is all about evolution. Faster signals to watch your latest Netflix movies. They claim a 2-hour movie could be downloaded in less than 4 seconds, which means reduced latency, i.e. the time that is taken from command to execution. In a world of bite-sized information and need for instant gratification, it seems to match the general consensus of the public. Instant data could apparently enable innovations in medical surgery with remote robotic operations, hypersonic weapons, and faster economies. Farmers want to use it to enable skilled techs to operate plough tractors and to synchronize functions with pesticide machines or feed machines for cattle, all running simultaneously. This would allow for data capture to strategize seemingly the most cost-effective way to operate. Government ministers are already rolling out these cell systems all over the country with seemingly disregard to any risk management. In the USA, the officials claim 5G will pump $12 trillion into the system by 2035 and add 22 million new jobs in the USA alone to usher in the fourth industrial revolution.
The FCC is taking very bold action, probably bolder than they've ever taken before. It's a new frontier to make wireless spectrum available. By next year, the United States is on pace to have more 5G spectrum than any other country in the world. That's a big statement because, as you know, some people got ahead of us. We should have been doing this a long time ago, and it's going to happen very quickly, very, very quickly. By the end of this year, the United States will have 92 5G deployments in markets nationwide. The next nearest country, South Korea, will have 48. So we have 92 compared to 48, and we're going to accelerate that pace greatly. But we must not rest. The race is far from over. American companies must lead the world in cellular technology. 5G networks must be secure. They must be strong. They have to be guarded from the enemy. We do have enemies out there, and they will be. They must also cover
Actually, the point you make is really that this is a global phenomenon. And I believe that it has probably been quietly rolled out for many years. I've heard about UK infrastructure being built since 2011 for 5G, but there was a point at which it was going to have to break the surface, if you like, of the water and become publicly visible. And so I think we are absolutely rightly concerned. If ever there was, I would say, in the history of humanity, and I don't want to overstate this, but if ever there was a case for the precautionary principle, it is now.
In reality, 5G will entail around 20,000 satellites for the network to be launched into space and beam intensive radiation to a large proportion of the Earth. At around 100 times on average the speed of 4G, it is shaping up to become a radioactive nightmare for humans, amplifying the risks. It will use much higher frequencies than our present devices, and the higher pulsations will enable more information to be carried. This will require that tens of millions of base antennae will be clustered together only 100 meters apart in every urban area in the world. However, due to the huge infrastructure required to do this, it will take perhaps even a decade to be fully transferred over to 5G. Additionally, the reach of the 5G network is expected to cover more than 40% of the world's population and have more than 1.5 billion users by the end of 2024, according to ZDNet. It has a planned rollout by 2020, according to the Ofcom telecoms regulator in the UK.
Well, as you know, initially the rollout shouldn't have occurred until December, this coming December, and here we are, they brought it as far forward as the 3rd of July, and recently it's been switched on, because I think there's a rush to get it in, because globally everyone is actually asking questions. They're saying, but is this harmful, is it damaging?
Another justification of 5G is autonomous cars which can be remotely controlled, akin to drones. Remarkably, this is indeed the technology used for military maneuvers behind enemy lines. And this requires more antennae set up in our neighbourhoods in close proximity to enable a practical geolocation system. In tandem, the operating systems don't appear to be well encrypted and therefore can be easily hacked into. Due to military surplus, autonomous vehicles are likely to be introduced broad spectrum in streets near us very shortly. Precursor to 5G in Civilian Street has already been utilised by the military. Electromagnetic forces were used by Nazis in World War II with the Mammoth radar system to track enemy planes.
And that's how the whole rear band thing took off. I mean, rear band was slightly earlier.
When was this introduced, rear band technology?
Rear band bomb and lush, they developed in 1936.
Right.
It was a sporting pair of glasses, and then there was a secret little rush to get something for the pilots, and that's how you see all American pilots with these fancy rear bands on.
Right.
To ban the rays, because those rays off that mammoth, believe us, were boiling and damaging their eyesight.
To block the rays, basically.
To block the rays.
And in the 1960s for weaponry and to neutralise Somali pirates in the Gulf of Aden. 5G utilises the very same frequencies that the navies use to disable pirate ships in the coast of Somalia. They have high-power electromagnetic systems in place that incapacitate the ship's crews by sending short bursts of signals at high frequency and power. It is said to be excruciatingly painful, and usually the boarding of ships affected goes on with zero resistance. It's very effective.
All of the big ships that pass through that area, they all have their own security crews, and if ever they're approached by pirates, they have this technology to completely neutralise the pirates. You get a searing headache. It's so acute and so intense that they can't function.
In contemporary warfare, they use more sophisticated battlefield interrogation equipment to subdue and control the enemy. They are treating our soldiers like guinea pigs. If there was no implicit danger, why introduce Ray-Bans to protect pilots from harmful radiation? The strategy is to use phased array radar systems with an antennae which directs plane spotlights to incoming bombers with radiation posing a risk to air crews. Military casualties lead to suicide. They have brain injuries, but the doctors are not trained to recognize the reality, and most of the victims are dismissed and labeled with some type of post-traumatic war syndrome. The game has ramped up, and EMF radiation has been used for crowd dispersal for looters and rioters, and by the US Army in the theatre of war in the Middle East. It is more dangerous because it uses much higher frequencies, between 24 GHz to 90 GHz. On reflection, a microwave oven cooks food using 2.45 GHz, and the US Army's microwave crowd control weapon heats people's skins from a distance using 95 GHz. No wonder you would feel as if your skin is on fire. And what place does this band of frequency have on civilian street today? So then, is 5G weaponized against us? 5G does not travel well due to the nature of its frequency, and it requires big towers which broadcast big differences. Likewise, it does not travel through objects so well, and consequently boxes are fitted to broadcast 5G down streets, on lampstands outside bedroom windows, and crossfields are created and huge satellites are required in tandem.
I can tell you what's on the top of that light, and it's got nothing to do with telecommunications. Right, each one of those transmitters got a 450 volt capacitor, 31,875. And if I wanted to scan your home with that technology, 3.5 volts to 12 volts would be max. I could still look through your home, no problem. The equipment on the top of that street light is absolutely lethal. It has the potential to harm.
5G neural networks with associated antennae are rolling out in local districts near you without any safety regulations or significant testing. They imply they will serve everybody with small cells which are actually focused radiation, whilst the potential risks are huge.
I was absolutely appalled when I had one of these antennas thrown at me by one of the lighting people, and I found it had a dielectric lens that allows me to focus a microwave radiation signal, supposedly on an autonomous car, but potentially a person, a human.
5G is not just higher frequency signal, it is actually more. 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now phased array signals, common to that used in the battlefield known to cause brain injury, are in tandem with this.
When I went to Switzerland to see the first demonstration of 5G, they showed it in terms of laser lines. When this is, if we could see it, that's literally what you would see if it's possible to see it. You would see straight line connections from a phased array aerial to your phone, and phased array. This is when we're really into putting ourselves at risk.
But there's a number of different antenna designs where you can actually focus these microwave radiation signals. So a number of different designs, and it all depends on the focality of the microwave. It's basically you're taking an energy field and focusing it down to a little point. A bit like a laser. You'll get a lot of the fools in the, whether they be academics or other, they'll tell you there's not enough energy in this particular part of the spectrum. Well, have you seen a laser cut?
So now we know from weapons technology that these higher frequencies can cause huge risks to life. So how is it going to be different in a domestic setting? How are we so easily coerced to sign up to such intrusive technologies? And how does the elite create compliance and acceptance?
As a species, human beings are very compliant. And people who have agendas use that compliance.
Subconsciously, the elite power brokers use mass media to bring us under their sway, with TV and Hollywood movies, biased medical journals to portray the world they want to take people into. They bombard us with adverts so parents who want to please their kids realise the quickest way to their hearts is through this gadgetry. As if becoming synthetic humans poses no threat to our existence, to make the subconscious mind familiar, so when they unroll the strategy, there is a familiarity prior to its introduction. Do we not remember when spraying our kids with DDT was popular? Pregnant women took formaldehyde to prevent nausea, and when smoking was good for the throat. Was there not a time when asbestos was a key resource in building management, and no explicit research had proven risks before implementation? What tactic was used in the past? Corporations did what they do, paid off politicians, paid scientists, and discredited people. This cannot happen again. It's one thing to be able to opt in and opt out of our preferred poisons, a glass of wine, an e-cigarette, junk food, Wi-Fi we can turn off at home, and another to have an electro-smog foisted upon us. However, unlike a thick industrial pollution, it's not apparent, as we don't see it or hear it, so we don't recognize it. Yet even being in the vicinity of a phone mast, if we use a device, we can hear clear static which emits 24/7. Many of us are familiar with blood diamonds. Do we pause to reflect, in tandem, that most cell phones contain tantalum from coltan, mined in Congo by child slaves in Ituri province? So the footprint causes harm across the globe, and are we not complicit in our acceptance of this technology? Research and development are only as good as the intention behind it, and any sponsored link to telecoms companies can be potentially dangerous. Guardian newspaper published a report to state that 67% of independently funded research found biological effects, but only 28% of industry-funded research found any link. The authors of the article explained that the telecoms industry doesn't need to win the scientific argument about safety, but simply keep the arguments running indefinitely by producing studies with results that fail to verify or even better contradict the research that does find adverse health effects, as concluded by Jeremy Nadler, a philosopher and cultural historian.
The whole issue of who funds scientific research is a thorny issue. I know many scientists like myself who, when they get a new study to read, the first thing they turn to is the back of the page where it says who funded it.
Is there, do you think, maybe a conflict of interest in the mobile phone industry funding research into the harm that it does?
Well, of course there is a potential conflict of interest, and that's why a programme of funding like this has to be carefully managed.
I've done a lot of work with the telecommunications industry because I happen to have I organise the communication workers representation in here, and so I've talked to these people for a long time. I think they would like to be objective, but they are driven, particularly in a market where they're fighting each other for market share by profit, and therefore they may fund research, but much like the pharmaceutical industry, you often find that they're hiring people who already spoken on their side of the argument.
Scientists aren't pop stars. They don't earn a lot of money. They have houses to finance. They have families to look after. Who can blame them for recognizing that if they find the wrong results, they're not going to get another job from that source at any rate?
There are psychological pressures, even in the absence of actual pressures, which may or may not be present in individual circumstances. There are clearly psychological pressures to conform and to please the organisation providing your funding.
You feel obliged.
You feel obliged, you feel obliged.
There are some really solid statistics showing that where there is an issue over electromagnetic field effects, that the studies funded by the utilities or by the power industry or the radio industry or by the mobile phone industry are funded by them, that the studies tend to be significantly negative, whereas the studies funded independently within universities and so on tend not to be so.
Scientists seem to be under a lot of pressure to find the right results, and that's why independent research is a must. Significantly, the World Health Organization acknowledges electrosensitivity, which proves there is an inherent danger in such technologies beyond reasonable doubt. Exeter Research reported from Devon that new street lamps could trigger thousands of cancers as they emit blue lights which disrupt hormones and lead to twice the risk of developing cancers in local residents. Harvard University studies declare that these lights increase brain cancer risk, and they also propose that the ones attached to transmitters posted at a certain frequency become weaponized.
Look at that. Risk group 2. Do not stay at operating lamp. That's on a lamppost outside of people's houses.
If the platform is compromised at a certain frequency, this could lead to fitting. I hope this study makes us rethink that magnetic field non-ionizing radiation is safe or has no health risk, said Dr. Dee Nun Lee, Senior Research Scientist at the Permanent Division of Research in Oakland, California. This is indeed certainly something we cannot just ignore. And the media has in many cases taken an alarmist approach to 5G. In the UK, the normally muted press associations such as the Express and Island's Eye, usually in accordance with government thinking, stated that 5G could lead to premature deaths. Tom Wheeler, on the other hand, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, is pushing the agenda in the USA. The government threatens utility companies to lose their license if not installing smart meters. And what is the reason behind such draconian policies? He was himself appointed by Obama, so lobbying was not a risk but a guarantee. A hijacking of the system that acted as a silencer to all threats. Norm Alster reported from the Centre of Ethics. The UK has adopted a similar strategy. Government initiatives are pushing companies such as British Gas to install a multitude of smart meters in your community, which work on 4G. They won't offer public liabilities insurance, yet continue to install their meters and will be fined if they fail to meet government targets. Of course, they have the choice to revoke their licenses, but with money involved, is this likely to influence them? The FDA and NTP in 1999 conducted 16 years, $30 million study explaining the effects of electromagnetic frequencies. In a 2016 report that was released, linked evidence is found between rats and cancer. And of course, this is only a precursor to the electro-smog that will be generated by 5G. In the UK, companies like EE and other telecoms businesses who are not using independent scientists and the local council in collusion are in breach of the Nuremberg Code of 1947 and have done very little, if anything, in careful consideration of your health. Take this point to matter when you consider the code was implemented in the wake of the Holocaust to stop authorities experimenting on people in a hazardous way. They claim voluntary consent is essential, yet none has been gained. No experiments should be conducted if it is believed to cause death or disability. Yet this has taken place in various councils across the country, as we shall divulge in due course. And the risk should never exceed the benefits, which seems very unlikely currently. Top mobile phone firms are warning shareholders over devices' possible cancer risks, but fail to tell their customers. Companies including BlackBerry, EE, Nokia and Vodafone have told investors they could face legal action from device users if research eventually finds links between their products and cancer. And British Telecom, which owns the EE, tells investors starkly in 2017 in its annual report, "We can't provide absolute assurance that research in the future won't establish links between radio frequency emissions and health risks." Whilst Nokia declared in a press release, "There have been some research results that indicate the possibility that electromagnetic waves emitted from mobile devices and base stations have adverse health effects, such as increasing the risk of cancer." So if companies are warning their investors there is a possible risk, then should they not be warning people who use their devices and networks? Sadly, the reality is quite the opposite today.
Here's the security. Oh, mate, all right? Yeah. Welcome to the show. Yeah, record me because I'll just record down here, okay? Record the floor. Yeah, I'll just record me. I'm just coming to talk to them to tell them about the health effects of 5G. They actually say to us, you're not allowed to talk about it in a negative way. You're only allowed to come in here and talk about 5G in a positive way. Right. So, I mean, the last time I checked, we didn't live in Nazi Germany. We're not allowed. I'm allowed freedom of speech. I'm allowed to come and talk to people. I'm allowed to express my concerns. I've expressed my concerns, and then this lady here just says, all right, I'm going to have to get the security to forcibly remove you. So, just because it's recording and stuff. And I wasn't recording you. I haven't recorded you. I haven't recorded you. I've recorded my face.
The press office about this stuff.
I've already tried to speak to the press office. I'm not here.
When it involves weapons
I'm not trying to do that.
And stuff like that. So we just kindly ask him to leave. And if he wants any more information, just contact the press office.
I've already contacted everything to do with EE, and they're just blankness. They hang up the phone. They don't respond to emails. They don't respond to letters. So
obviously with it being their store.
Yes,
I know that you keep recording. That's all.
Yeah. So I just need to leave the store.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'll leave the store. You're all part of the crime, though. Be aware. There's EE shop here.
The corporatocracy in telecoms is scrambling around competing to secure all the top contracts before D-Day. 5G frequencies have been sold for €9 billion, and a lot of profit and wage tax is levied annually by the telecom providers who earn a lot of money. Collateral damage is not an issue when banknotes are being counted. Nevertheless, there is still clear evidence presented by the telecom industry which proves that we should err on the side of caution. The independent expert group on mobile phones, the IEGMP, chaired by Sir William Stewart, produced a report in 2000 which stated, "It is not possible at present to say that exposure to radio frequency radiation, even at levels below national guidelines, is totally without potential adverse side effects, that the gaps in knowledge are sufficient to justify a precautionary approach." So when we read between the lines, is there a conflict of interest? Do telecoms companies undermine the impartiality that governs the regulation of public exposure standards for non-ionizing radiation?
But there's a number of different antenna designs where you can actually focus these microwave radiation signals, and it all depends on the focality of the microwave. It's basically you're taking an energy field and focusing it down to a little point. A bit like a laser. You'll get a lot of the fools in the, whether they be academics or other, they'll tell you there's not enough energy in this particular part of the spectrum. Well, have you seen a laser cut? And it's all about pulse modulation and frequency. So anybody that tells me there's not enough energy in the non-ionizing radiation spectrum to damage a human is, well.
And how is it that despite the extensive research and development, independent and by industry, the guidelines and safety standards set through the government agencies often seem to be inadequate? The UK has set their safety limits through the ICNIRP, the de facto organisation for assessing mobile safety and setting radiation exposure limits. And these seem to be far too high for biological protection on analysis. The current regulations in use were set as far back as the 1990s and were only there to protect from thermal heating effects and failed to protect from copiously documented non-thermal effects. They are based only for 6 minutes exposure, and no safety tests have proven that they are acceptable. So what about all the devices that are left on 24/7? In December 2018, researchers at the Swiss ITI's Institute, which receives some funding from the telecoms industry, advised that the ICNIRP's safety standards for exposure to electromagnetic radiation should be revised, preventing thermal damage. Even a spokesperson from the same organisation, ICNIRP, Van Rooyen, conceded, "No, we're not convinced of that. We know there are non-thermal effects." And this was stated in the 5G Final Assault article by Jeremy Nadler. Even the regulatory board themselves, the ICNIRP, they've said in the past, do not rely on our guidelines to set safety limits. So if they're saying that, and that's the basis of how the government is setting the safety limits in the UK, then what is that saying about the potential risks and the issues that we might have with the rollout?
So I don't feel I can comment on that at the moment.
So the guidelines that are used in Europe and America are set by a private industry body called ICNIRP, ICNIRP, and they are based on 6-minute thermal heating rules or guidance. So essentially it's on the premise that if an electromagnetic field or a radio frequency wave affects tissue and produces more than 1 degree centigrade rise in that tissue over 6 minutes or less, there is a problem.
Now we know obviously most people's devices are on much longer than that, people interact with the devices longer than that.
Yes.
And also, I presume the parameter is not set differently for different demographics or different age groups, so children and adults obviously would be affected differently. So how does that incorporate that into that scheme?
So you're quite right. So children and other sensitive groups are said to need tighter standards, but those are not specified by ICNIRP. These 6-minute standards mean that if it heats you in 6 minutes, it's a problem. If it takes 7 minutes to heat you, if it takes 16 minutes to heat you, if it takes 60 minutes to heat you, if it takes 6 hours to heat you, that is not deemed to be a problem. So firstly, there's possibly a lack of objectivity in this area, but certainly not a sound biological basis.
The guidelines are archaic. They were set up in the 60s. 5G was not even a consideration then.
ICNIRP sets limits, and governments follow these, on thermal effects only. Now, we know that biology is affected by non-thermal effects. So the non-thermal effects are paramount and important.
The essence of the research that the World Health Organization from ICNIRP, the little captured agency of ex-telco people, was based on a 1996 experiment on a plastic mannequin they nicknamed Sam, filled with saline solution, that was measuring how many EMFs did it take to raise the temperature 2 degrees. Most living organisms are a little bit more sophisticated than a bucket of salty water, wouldn't you say?
The current position of Public Health England, and you'd have to ask them to clarify this, has been to follow ICNIRP and to say that if it isn't heating you over 6 minutes, then there isn't a problem. I think unfortunately the science and the biology tells us something different, and so at some point I would expect public health agencies to want to look at the evidence again.
Telecommunications industry is at fault here because they are the ones who are funding a lot of the research, and they have the ear of the government, and also in Agenda 30 in the conferences, in the backroom conferences that are going on right now with Agenda 30, is we see a lot of telecommunications experts, people from the industry, leaders of the industry, who are telling the way forward to achieve a sustainable goal. Sustainability is through smart cities, smart grids, smart meters and all of this so we can measure energy efficiently. They've got lots of reasons.
SMART stands for Secret Militarised Armaments and Residential Technology. So that's what SMART is. This is part of the secret SMART agenda, and this is here to harm and harm the citizen.
Another interesting side point we came across is that PHE's stance today reveals perhaps even a darker side to this story. They are now promoting innovation based on the fact that prevention is better than cure. Of course, in essence, a wonderful statement, beneficent for people with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, strokes, etc. Their system will be based on more digital technology, health applications, and wearable devices such as 5G smartwatches, bracelets, and even RFID chips. This will measure your pulse, blood pressure, and vital statistics, and much more, linking your personal data to medical databases and who and what else. It will tell you if we're eating too much, sleeping too much. So what level of surveillance does this imply to generate this data about us? A full spectrum smart home in a smart city. They use the caveat of us becoming co-creationists to offer us a sense of personal empowerment where we are in control of our health. But is this not actually just a smokescreen for something more sinister? So in conclusion, if science and academic research proves the risks of 5G networks is real, then why do we see politicians burying their heads in the sand? Are they just puppets for a well-orchestrated elite agenda? And is there a hidden hand behind the masquerade? If 5G poses a significant risk, as implicated by scientific journals, academic professors, and their research teams, medical physicians, and EMF health specialists, then what conclusion can we draw to the apparent smokescreen? If ex-government employees, whistleblowers, and military weapons experts declare that the same technologies used in military hardware are part and parcel of 5G networks being rolled out across the globe, then what really is the intention? And also, if regulatory bodies and public health boards that adhere to them and the telecoms industry that lobbies government evidently pay people to carry out research to declare the opposite view, then surely only one conclusion remains. Can it be regarded as anything other than a treasonable offence? So now you have seen the history of this technological revolution and its clandestine promise of smart, convenient lives for everybody. We promise to reveal so much more. Is life indeed bioelectrically sensitive? And what impact does EMF have on all life forms? We shall take various case studies across the UK to reveal the impact on everyday lives, and also those willing to put their own lives on the line so that the truth be known, and we the people likewise have a choice to either stand with them for truth and justice, or like the elite, bury our head in the sand as well.